Alright, so I am back to, I'm back to continue this summary of Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parzival. And today I will be talking about book number 9. So last time around in this series, covered Sir Gawain, because the narrative had switched to him for 2 books, and now we're going back to Parzival's quest. So we're going to get the Grail lore, legend, history behind it laid out here. So Parzival's adventure resumes. He finds himself at the Hermites. It's a hermit's abode, but there's a woman living there. It happens to be Sigune, again, Amfortis's niece, the niece of the Fisher King. She's wearing a hair shirt underneath a gray dress. She's carrying a psalter, and she's in mourning over her dead husband. Parzival doesn't recognize her at first. It's through questioning that he figures out that it's her and she him. Parzival asks her how it is that she's come to live in the wilderness without any food and anything, and she tells Parzival that Kundry, the same Kundry that cursed Parzival at King Arthur's court, has been bringing her food from the Grail every Saturday night, and it sustains her throughout the week. So they speak of the Grail quest a little bit and Parzival's failures, and Sigune tells him, look man, you could probably catch up with Kundry if you ride quickly. So he goes off on his way, and he gets into a single combat with a Grail Knight. He jousts and wins and loses his spear. Then he just rides on for weeks and weeks on various adventures till he comes across an old gray knight on Good Friday who tells him, you should go talk to this holy man that lives at a hermitage. So Parzival, while he's riding along, he's thinking on God. He arrives at the hermit's abode here. It's Trevrisalt, and this is the one who he took the spear from 4.5 years ago. And it was at this place where he swore on this relic. I have a note here that says, the history of the Grail is given on page 191 at the bottom of the page. So I don't know how much of this I'll read, but this is really the part where things are going to get interesting. So it says, Parzival will now learn the hidden tidings concerning the Grail. This is on page 191. Of the Oxford University Press edition. There's your ISBN number there, once again. Anybody interested in reading this. So we're like down here around line 453. It says there, well, let's skip down some. It says, Kiot, the renowned scholar found in Toledo, lying neglected in the heathen script. This adventure's fundament, the ABC of those characters he must have learned beforehand without the art of necromancy. It helped that baptism dwelt with him, or else the tale would still be unheard. No heathen cunning could avail us to tell about the Grail's nature, how its mysteries were perceived. A heathen, Phlegantinus, had won high fame by his skills. That same visionary was born of Solomon's line, begotten of an age-old Israelite stock. So this is connected back to King Solomon from the Old Testament. And it says, before baptism became our shield against hellfire. He wrote about the Grail's adventure. He was a heathen on his father's side. Phlegantinus worshipped a calf as if it were his god. How can the devil inflict such mockery upon such wise people without him who bears the highest hand parting them, or having parted them from such practice? he to whom all marvels are known. Phlegontinus the heathen knew well how to impart to us each star's departure and its arrival thereon, so he knew astronomy, how long each revolves before it stands back in its station. By the star's circuit's journey, all human nature is determined. So this is fate, fatalism, right? The idea that everything is predetermined, which is not an orthodox concept, but it has found its way into certain strains of, Christianity, such as, for instance, Reformed theology. This is, let's see, Phlegontinus the heathen saw with his own eyes modestly, though he spoke of this, occult mysteries in the constellation. He said there was a thing called the Grail, whose name he read immediately in the constellation, what it was called. A host abandoned it upon the earth, flying up high above the stars. Was it their innocence drew them back? Ever since baptized fruit has had to tend with such chaste courtesy, those human beings are always worthy, whose presence is requested by the Grail. Thus Phlegontinus wrote of it. Kyot, Kyot, that wise scholar, began to seek for those tidings in Latin books, of where there had been a people fitting to tend the Grail and embrace such chastity. He read the chronicles of the lands, those of Britain and elsewhere, France and Ireland. In Anjou he found the tidings. He read there the whole undoubted truth concerning Mazadon. This is the great-grandfather of Parzival. A true account of all his lineage was written there, and how on the other side Titurel and his son Frumatil bequeathed the Grail to Anfortis, the Grail king, right? Whose sister was Hersledite. This is Parzival's mother, by whom Gomerich gained that son, of whom these tales tell. So you have that. And then it's going to go on. He telling a little bit about it, supposedly where Wolfram von Eschenbach is getting this information from. And let's see here. We're going to get a little bit of more information about the Grail on page 197 and 198. So basically this hermit and Parzival are talking to each other. They're talking about the Grail king, Parzival's lineage, etc. We find out that this hermit is actually Parzival's uncle. It's his mother's brother, and we learn a little bit about Anfortis. Let's see, page 197. Where do I got it linked here? It says, okay, bottom of the page, down here. The host said, "It is well known to me that many a valorous hand resides by the Grail at Montsalvache. In search of adventures, they constantly ride many a journey." Montsalvache is the Fisher King's realm, his castle, his lands. Let's see. Those same Templars, these are the Grail Knights, okay, whenever they meet with grief or fame, they count it against their sins. One quick note. Some people have said that this is a link to the Knights Templar. It's debated. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know. So, a combative company dwells there at the Fisher King's abode. I will tell you of their food. They live by a stone whose nature is most pure. If you know nothing of it, it shall be named to you here. It is called Lapsite Excellis. The note here in the back says these corrupt Latin words are rendered variously by the manuscripts and interpreted even more variously by critics. The sense would seem to be, quote, "it or a stone fell from the heavens," unquote. Okay. And then it says, by that stone's power, the phoenix burns away, turning to ashes. Yet those ashes bring it back to life. So here we have the mystery or the legend of the phoenix tied to this. Thus the phoenix sheds its molting plumage and thereafter gives us off such bright radiance that it becomes as beautiful as before. Moreover, never was a man in such pain, but from that day he beholds the stone, he cannot die in the week that follows immediately after. Nor will his complexion ever decline. He will be averred to have such color as he possessed when he saw the stone, whether it be maid or man, as when his best season commenced. If that person saw the stone for 200 years, his hair would never turn gray. Such power does the stone bestow upon man, that his flesh and bone immediately acquire youth. That stone is also called the Grail. So here we have that the Grail, Wolfram von Eschenbach, is not a cup, it's not a platter, it's a stone. It has an epitaph on it. It tells of the name and the lineage of whoever is to become the Grail's master, right? Like the keeper of the Grail. Their name ends up like on it in an epitaph. Let's see. There is to those, okay, so here we go. Those who stood on neither side, the neutral angels, okay, when Lucifer and the Trinity began to contend, all such angels, noble and worthy, had to descend to the earth to this same stone. The stone is forever pure. I do not know if God forgave them, whether he condemned them from that time forth. If he deemed it right, he took them back. The stone has been tended ever since by those appointed by God to the task, and to whom he sent his angel. Sir, this is the nature of the Grail. Then Parzival's asking more questions about this, and they're continuing their conversation. You know, it's basically the question that Parzival is told that if you would have asked, Lord, what is the nature of your distress? If he would have asked that of the Grail King, Amfortas, then he would have become the keeper of the Grail, or the Lord of the Grail. Amfortas would have been healed, and all the land would have been restored. Parzival is told that Ithgar of Geheveres, the knight that he killed and took the red armor from, is actually his kin, so he slew his own relative. This is a great sin. He's given the background on Amfortas, how Amfortas was wounded. He was pierced with a spear in heathen lands in the genitals. He was wounded in joust by a poisoned spear, so he's never regained his health. Your gentle uncle pierced through his genitals. It was a heathen who fought there and who rode to that joust against him, born in Ethnis, where the Tigris flows forth from paradise. So we're taking this back to the garden that's east of Eden in the scriptures, sometimes called the Garden of Eden, right? We talk about the 4 rivers that flow from there, the Gihon, the Pishon, the Euphrates, and the Tigris that flow from paradise. It was near there. They talk about how all these various things they tried to heal Amfortas, and none of it works. Nothing, you know. So there has to be, Parzival basically is his only way for the Fisher King to be healed of his wound, is for him to ask the question while he's in the presence of the Grail. Page 211 is the end here. We have Parzival being instructed by this hermit, his uncle. And let's see, what exactly does he say? Okay, so he says, if you would adorn your life and ride a truly worthy road, then you must be sparing of enmity towards women. Women and priests are known to bear defenseless hands, while God's blessing extends over their clergy. Your service must tend to them with loyalty. If your end is to be a good one, you must be well disposed towards priests, Whatever your eye sees on this earth, there is nothing equal to a priest. His mouth speaks of the passion which destroys our doom, so the passion of Christ, and his consecrated hand grasped the highest pledge that was ever placed against guilt. So he's obviously talking about the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper. If any priest has so conducted himself that he can bring chastity to his office, how might he live in more hallowed fashion? That was the day of their parting. Trevisan, having made his decision, spoke, "Give your sin over to me. Before God, I am your atonement's guarantor, and I act as I have told you. Remain undaunted in that resolve." They parted from one another. If you wish, contemplate how. So he receives Parzival's, what do you want to say, confession, and grants him absolution for his sin. So he's been instructed in how to be a Christian, essentially. He received catechesis. That's where it ends. In the next book, we'll pick up with Gawain. So, my kids. All right, thank you for watching. All three of you or two of you. Yeah, whatever. I'm just mainly doing this for me, so that I have a record of reading this in case I want to read it again in the future. This is a text that I will revisit because it's very interesting. It's got a lot of layers, and I'm just hitting like really superficial, surface level summary material here. All right, so long.